New World, for any of you who don't know, is a new AAA MMORPG made by Amazon Studios coming out on August 31st. And I'm currently working on a video talking about the general state of the MMO genre right now, but suffice to say that anyone who's interested in the genre is very starved for new things right now. And New World is the only AAA experience that we have a release date for. So there's a lot of hype and expectation around it. We really don't have many new games, and New World is one of the highlights of this year that everyone's looking for. They're going to have a cash shop, we know this, and there was a leak from their NDA Alpha forums regarding new testing they're going to be doing related to this cash shop. We're going to go things line by line and discuss it as we go, but let's just read the entirety of it first. Premium currency shop internal testing. New World is introducing in-game purchases for special cosmetic items for players and their in-game homes. We will sell cosmetics in the form of item skins, dyes, company crests, and emotes. We may sell quality of life items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling up their character and trade skill experience. We're committed on keeping the competitive systems fair and balanced for all customers, and purchases will not provide a competitive edge over another player who chooses not to purchase additional items. During the May release, we'll be testing our in-game store. Players will be seeded with a new currency, Marks of Fortune, that can purchase a lumberjack skin, a premium emote, and a red, black, and gold dye pack. For a limited time during May, the in-game storefront will be activated for testing using granted Marks of Fortune. The only items you acquire through this test will not be permanent. Future premium currency testing will come in June and July. Oh boy, okay, right, let's start at the top, shall we? So, let's start with we will sell cosmetics in the form of item skins, dyes, company crests, and emotes. Now, it makes me very sad that we as MMO players have just accepted that the selling of cosmetics is part of the course. No one really makes a fuss about this anymore. It's just accepted. No matter if there's a box cost of the game, a monthly subscription, and expansion costs, we still just accept that cosmetics are going to be a sold premium. And by cosmetics, I'm also going to include mounts in this discussion as well, as long as that mount is just, it acts the same as other mounts, it just looks cooler. Why am I pretty sad about this? Because progression is at the heart of all MMOs, more so than any other game. The whole point is it's a long-term progression of your character, and that progression feels rewarding. There's a reward at the end of that progression. And the reason why people can play it for so long is that it's progression in the context of a whole bunch of other people that you can interact with. Even if you're mostly solo player, you're still running around, seeing, interacting, and you know that people are seeing you as you run around. As a new player, one of the things that often keeps people going is seeing higher level players, often with their badass gear, and thinking, wow, I want to get where they are. I want to get a max level. I want to be a badass like that too. Even when people hit endgame, other players are a motivation and a goal to work towards because they have things that you don't. You can see them you can see them in the gear that's very difficult to come across, that's highly prestigious to achieve. There are other elements to this too. You might know that there's an elite group of raiders, and you want to be a raider too. But notice that the immediate first impression there is see. That's the easiest way you compare yourself to other players. You see them. Now, if there's a whole bunch of cosmetics in the cash shop, when you see other players and they look cool, chances are you're just going to say to yourself, they just spent some money at the game. They just threw some money at the game. And that can really dilute and impact the feel of the game and the feel of your visual progression and the reward you feel at that visual progression. It's hard to point at this and be like, yes, this one thing will ruin the game. I won't play the game because of this. None of these are to that extent. And I think that's one of the things that game devs maybe find difficult to appreciate, is that all of these little things impact the experience you have and the impressions you feel and the rewards you feel in playing. A lot of the time, it's a very background, almost subconscious feeling, but it does impact it. By selling cosmetics, you seriously impact the ability for people to be motivated and feel rewarded by the visual progression of their character. Because for the simple reason is that cosmetic items on the cash shop are going, the devs make them to be sold. Therefore, they're going to look better than the items you can get in game, or at the very least, they're going to look unique in comparison to the items you can get in game. Because if they looked really boring, no one would buy them. There'll be no point. So if you want to look the coolest in the game, you just need to throw some money at the game. And that can, even if there are satisfying long-term progression paths for in-game cosmetics that you earn through genuinely being good and dedicated to the game, even that can impact the reward you feel having achieved that, because you know that you could have looked as cool by just throwing some money at the game. And so this we sell cosmetics is not the controversial point of this entire leak. But I just want to share how I personally I'm saddened by the fact that that's just part of the course, part of the course now, that cosmetics are sold in in-game cash shops, and that's not even controversial anymore. Right, but let's get on to more controversial stuff. We may sell quality of life items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling up their character and trade skill experience. We're committed on keeping the competitive systems fair and balanced for all customers, and purchases will not provide a competitive edge over another player who chooses not to purchase additional items. All right, this is the not so great stuff, right? Firstly, let's just look at the verbiage, right? We may sell. I'm going to ignore the word may. Amazon is a huge company. This game has huge amount of money. The marketing, the PR people who wrote this would have agonized over the exact wording to use, because they would have known that this would have caused a big uproar and upset. Using the word may is just their attempt to minimize that negative feeling. So ignore the word may. They're going to be testing this. They say it later on. They're going to be testing it. So they are going to sell quality of life items or boosts that will help the players improve their time spent leveling up their character and trade skill experience. Okay, we're first going to talk about why this is a great shame in an established game, before talking about how insidious it is for a game that hasn't even released yet. Items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling up. So you're selling progression, right? You're going to be selling level boosts. You're going to be selling experience boosts. That's what they mean by boosts. That once again hampers and impacts that feeling of progression, that feeling of reward. Firstly, because you can be grinding away. You can say to yourself, right, I'm going to work really hard to level up my trade skill really high. That's a goal that people are going to have, because MMOs are about long-term progression of the game. Now, you're just going to feel less good doing that if you know that you could throw some money at the game and do it faster. But you're not going to want to do that, because you're not going to want to either spend that money or support those practices. And this is how these things can impact your experience playing the game. Will it make you actively stop the game? No. But it absolutely does impact that feeling of progression and reward. And that, as we said, is the core element of why MMOs really exist, that feeling of long-term progression. You impact and you damage and you sort of milk as much money out of those core systems of the game too much, and people aren't going to have a fun time, and they're going to be disenfranchised, and they're going to become disinterested. It can also have massive impacts to the economy, because what if trade skills almost certainly are going to require resources to get better at. You're going to need to consume resources to get better, to level up. Which means that if you're selling a boost to level up, then you're essentially selling currency through saving money, right? Let's say it costs 1 million arbitrary currency to level up from 1 to max normally, and you can halve that, so it will cost 500,000 of currency to do the same thing with the boost. Well, someone's effectively just bought 500,000 of that currency by getting this boost, right? So it can affect the economy, and it just massively impacts the experience you have, is the first point. And this is a similar system with the quality of life. Quality of life screams things to me like inventory space is a typical one, or storage space in your bank, or other mechanisms that make you enjoy the game more. Now, why are both of these so, and I would argue, sort of insidious and toxic to the integrity of a game, is that they highly, highly incentivize the game developers to make the life, to create deliberate problems and then sell the solution. The easiest example, which many games do, is with your inventory space. They give you a very small amount of inventory space and they say, hey, spend some money and get more. They deliberately impact the core experience of the game, namely making you have a really irritatingly small amount of bag space and sell you the solution. Same with the boosts. it can really encourage them to make the core non-boosted experience really boring and grindy and long and tedious, and then sell you the answer, namely that boost. And I think this is the real scary element of this, is that impact on design that it can have. Because once again, progression is the fundamental core part of what makes MMOs fun, why people play MMOs. And what the devs are doing here is and what devs do in general on MMO, because this is not new, is they deliberately impact and make that experience worse to encourage you to spend money. And that just sucks. They then go on to say, we're committed on keeping the competitive systems fair and balanced for all customers, and purchasers will not provide a competitive edge over another player who chooses not to purchase additional items. Right, so they're just trying to persuade you that this is not going to be pay to win by this. And I really dislike the word on competitive, because who are the devs to determine what's competitive or not? Okay, it might not literally make your character more powerful in PvP, let's say. They might not literally do that. And it's even worse because the game hasn't even released yet. Now, when MMOs first release, the first couple of months, the game is not about endgame. The game is all about achieving endgame, right? It's all the players all together, leveling up together, and the first ones who get to max level, the first ones who get their trade skills to the highest point, who can begin entering into that game for endgame for the first time, that's the goal, right? Newer players can see these players achieving these goals and be like, I want that, I want to get there. The entire purpose of the game at first is around that leveling experience. Now, if they open the game, if they go live with the game with boosts available, then that is essentially, that I would argue that is completely pay to win, for the very simple reason that the entire purpose of the game at first is leveling up. If someone could just throw money at the game and double that rate, or get boosted immediately, or whatever it may well be, well, they're going to get far ahead of everyone else who's trying to do it organically and naturally. And a small number of people will engage in these boosts. But the fact that that exists will impact that satisfaction and reward and first impressions of the game of everyone else. Because they'll be slaving away trying to do it properly. And people who've just thrown money at the game will have achieved more than them. And that's why I think this is so incredibly concerning, is that this is being talked about before the game has even released yet. And I'm very much worried about the impact that's going to have on that initial experience, coupled with all the other things I've just discussed. And what I really dislike is that the all game devs these days want to avoid being labeled with pay to win, and all they seem to care about is the impact on competitive elements of the game. Let's say like actual PvP is a good example, right? They'll argue they're not pay to win if they're not selling items that make people more powerful. But what they don't realize is that actually those competitive systems are an important part of the game, and they're their important goal. You know, people want to get good enough to engage in those systems. But an MMO is a huge world. It's an experience. It's an experience that people want to come in day out for weeks, months, and years at a time. And the majority of the time that people are going to spend playing are going to be in progressing their character in some form. They're not going to be spending thousands of hours necessarily in PvP. Some might, but a lot of the time you're also just going to be doing activities that you find fun and chill, that progresses your character in some way. You're going to be working towards that cosmetic that's cool. You're going to be working towards getting better gear. You're going to be working towards increasing your professions. You're going to want to be exploring the map and maybe completing achievements, getting that feeling of completionism through that. That's the core baseline experience of the game. Those progression systems are the foundation which everything is based off. By selling boosts and effectively cheats and quality of life improvement and all of this stuff undermine those foundations. You'll be starting a live experience by making those as rocky and as unstable as possible, because you're going to be impacting people's experience of the core heart of the game, and you're going to be impacting the value that people feel over their time, the reward they feel of their time, as well as the goodwill that they have. I discuss this in more detail in my general MMO talk, but right now you get the impression that MMOs are, well, and gaming in general is run by people who want to maximize profits and want to squeeze as much money as possible out of their player base, and who want to walk that line between maximizing their average revenue per customer and the number of customers that they have. And they will get away with as much as they possibly can without destroying their player base, because that's the sweet spot of monetization. If people feel like that, if people feel like the devs are just trying to get away with as much as they can, which now already a huge swathe of the player base after this leak is going to think, that immediately makes your entire player base cynical to everything that they do, to everything that you do. You've sort of lost the respect of your player base, because with every single move that you make, people are going to be in the context of how are you trying to make money out of this? You know, how are you trying to screw me over here? How much am I going to need to fight back against this? And without that goodwill, people lose patience. You know, if the initial game is a little bit rocky, is a little bit short of content, or whatever it may well be, if people feel like the devs have poured their heart and soul and love into the game, and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, they'll be much more inclined to stick around to see where it goes. If people feel like the game devs have deliberately compromised those systems, or the core systems of the game, by sort of pushing the cash shop, even if the same situation exists where, let's say, there's not very much content and, you know, they're busy working on more content in the background, people are going to have far less patience to stick around, because they won't have any goodwill left towards the company. They'll just think, this is just an opportunity to get as much money from me as possible, and they'll leave. So this isn't necessarily the time to pick up the pitchforks and all the rest of it, because this is a leak from an NDA forum, and obviously there's plenty of opportunity for the company to walk back on this. And I think we can only, start really judging when announcements are made officially. But it's certainly safe to say that this is quite a concerning and disheartening leak. I'm still going to play the game for the simple reason that I, like many other people, are super starved for MMO fun content right now. But this does immediately make me feel like this isn't going to be the next game that I'm going to spend months and months and months playing. I might have fun exploring it for the first time, but then I'll probably step back. My expectation now is that this is just going to be another flash in the pan MMO, which will be fun for a little while. Lots of people will play it. The player base will crash. There might be a small community of hardcore people who keep on playing it. And obviously, my expectations can still be subverted. I really hope they are. But it's a shame that just this one leak has changed those expectations for me, because I really am looking for some people to be bold and brave and to push the boat out, to innovate and to try and do something interesting with this genre, and to start sort of treating the players with a little bit more respect. And I know many of you might be thinking, well, of course, this is Amazon. They're going to be driven by profits. I was actually hoping the opposite. I was hoping that Amazon has so much money that their need to be profitable was less. And so given the general feeling of the MMO genre right now, that they could afford to effectively treat their players incredibly well, to raise the bar, to gain the admiration and respect of everybody, and to make other companies struggle and scramble to keep up. That's what I was actually hoping for. I was hoping that the size of Amazon meant that they could be that bold, but they could try and be ambitious and capture a huge swathe of the player base of MMOs by breaking the mold and by making a game out of love and treating their players really, really, really well. So to see them before the game is even released talk about how they can monetize and add quality of life and add boosts undermines that entire expectation, which is a shame. But I think that's where we'll wrap up this week's discussion. We will be playing New World. We'll keep on following New World for the same reason as before. But do stick around. We'll be having one of these news shows every week. And I'm working on a more general discussion into the state of MMOs, which I'll welcome you all to subscribe to see later on. But as always, happy adventuring, guys, and I will see you next time.